have two sisters that I'm close with. I also have a niece, Leah. Leah's 16, and after my ex-wife decided to split up and divorce due to infertility problems that lasted for 5 years, I started a college fund for Leah to help her go to her chosen college. That was in 2019. Now I visit my mother's home, where my sister and Leah are living, every week to spend the weekend together. This past weekend I was asleep upstairs while my mother, my sister and Leah were in the kitchen. I came downstairs to grab a glass of water and heard my sister talking about my ex-wife expecting a baby with her new husband. This struck a nerve and I kind of froze from shock. I then heard Leah react to the news repeatedly saying, "I told you so, I told you so." Then explained she's always thought that I was the one with a problem for not being able to have a baby with my ex, but that I was too afraid to admit due to fragile masculinity. I could not believe what she said, but what made it worse is her following statement about how my ex was smart to get a divorce before it was too late. I went upstairs and into the room and shut the door and stayed there for hours. Mom and sister saw me about to leave and insisted to know what the problem was. I didn't want to argue, but I told them that I heard what Leah said about me. Leah stopped eating and got quiet. My sister tried to play dumb, but I told her I heard their entire conversation about my ex-wife and her pregnancy news. My sister tried to backpedal, saying Leah is just a kid who doesn't know much about this stuff and was just spouting nonsense. I told them I don't want to talk about it and they refused to let me leave, but I left eventually. I later sent my sister a text telling her about how hurt and devastated I was because of what Leah said, and told her I will no longer be responsible for funding her education. My sister kept trying to call, then texted saying Leah didn't mean what she said and offered to make her apologize, but I didn't feel comfortable being in the same room with someone who blamed me for something that was out of my control and something that literally turned my life upside down. My mother tried to get me to come over so we could talk, saying Leah doesn't deserve me turning my back on her like that. I haven't seen my sister nor Leah after what happened, but they are still trying to contact me, which means there's still a room for a discussion, and so I've decided to go see them tomorrow. Sit down together and have a long conversation. But this, I admit that I was mad when I told my sister about the college fund cancellation. I love Leah so much and see her as my own daughter. Unfortunately, her dad, my brother-in-law, is deceased, and so I understand losing a parent at a young age and relate to the kind of hurt she carries inside. Lost my father in an accident when I was 11, and I think that sitting down and talking things out is the best option before I make any decision. Also, one more thing to clarify, both my ex-wife and I were having these fertility issues. Both sides, but since my ex-wife got pregnant soon after her new marriage, then my family thought that I was the problem originally. It is what it is, and I'm learning to not words get in my head so easily. I'm not mad at anyone, I'm just trying to move on with my life like anybody else. I am a 19-year-old female. I have an estranged grandpa, more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have two other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older, he saw him a little more, and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister, who is in right now, and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets, and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18 and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally. But morally? Me and Diamara, she is 12 years old, have had a rough summer. She's been more defiant than usual. I've been dating her mom Mara for 2 years now. 9 months ago, they moved in with me, Maple. Both Dio and Mara have an on-again / off-again relationship with Dio's dad, Dionysus. He's pretty much never paid child support, comes and goes as he pleases into Dio's life. Typical shitty-ass part-time dad. I've tried to fill the dad role in her life, while still understanding boundaries, taking things slow, etc. This summer Dionysus decides he wants to be a real dad and takes Dio in for a month. Good for him, not my business, and Mara agrees. When Dio came back home because school started she was a lot different. Really mean to me, very dismissive. A few days ago she got caught shoplifting at the mall. Security took her in, then called Mara, who didn't answer, then called Dionysus, who didn't answer, and finally me. I answered. They told me I had to pick her up or she'll be handed over to juvenile. I didn't say anything to her while I picked her up. I apologized to security, apologized to the store. I even tipped the security guards plus the store employees because it's up they had to deal with that. I assured them Dio would be punished appropriately. I'm speaking to her in a strong, affirmative voice while we're in the car. Not yelling, but in a fatherly tone, I suppose. I'm telling her how up it is to steal, and how I don't. With thieves, and how I absolutely don't voluntarily. With any kind of police, so I don't appreciate any of this nor will I accept it in my house. She snaps back that I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell her what to do. From now on, if I want to tell her something I need to clear it with her real father first. That killed my soul. For the past year or so, I've treated her as my own daughter. I've paid for their housing, I've paid for her mom's car, her schooling, her food, everything. Her bio dad dropped $100 check off one time in the past year. In check bounced, so I had to call him up and he brought cash over. I told Mara about all of this. She was appalled at what Dio said, but she never made Dio apologize because she's not wrong, you're not her dad. A couple of days later Dio asks me for some money to pay for her uniform / accessories she needs for a sport she's involved in. I say go ask your dad. She scoffs and says her dad doesn't have the money for it, so I have to pay for it. I tell her, I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell me what I have to pay for. She cried to Mara, who tells me I'm not being an adult about the situation. Mind you, I never received an apology or a thanks for our entire previous situation. Mara says Dio is a kid and I need to stop acting like a kid too. I met this guy about 18 months ago, and we've been together since. He knows about my employment history, and he said that he has no issue with it. Though he did ask me to tell his family the white lie I occasionally use on my CV and stuff, which is that I was a waitress. A month ago we found out that I'm 2 months pregnant. He says this is great news, and we should move in together. I assumed he'd be moving into my place because he rents his far smaller one-bedroom flat while I own mine. And I have room for a baby's room while he doesn't. Also, I really don't want to leave my flat. It's my flat, I love it, I could see myself living here for the rest of my life. And I don't want to lose the security of owning a flat and have to go back to paying rent or a mortgage each month. However, he then said that he didn't want to move into my place, and said I should sell it and we buy a place together. I said that I like my place, it means a lot to me that I was able to buy it. And it represents years of working my arse off scrimping and saving. He then said that he understands all of that. But we should be living together by the time the baby comes, and he didn't want to live in my flat. I asked him why not. It's a great flat, it's central to everything, it's spacious, it's got room for all his stuff. There's a daycare in the building, run//owned by another tenant, and a school 5-minute walk away, the list goes on. And he said that he didn't want to live in a flat that was bought with stripper money. That really pissed me off, and I told him no. Way am I selling my flat, and that he never had an issue with my stripper money paying for this flat before now. I said I wasn't giving up the security of owning a home for someone who tries to make me feel ashamed about something I don't feel ashamed of. He said that his point is if I sold the flat then we could get a new place with the money from the sale. I said, wouldn't that still be stripper money? And he said that's different, and I asked how. He then said he was going back to his place because I can't talk to you when you're in this state. He's gone back to his flat now, and he's texted me saying I'm overreacting / irrational, and I need to think of this realistically, rather than emotionally. He says he wouldn't feel right raising a child in my flat knowing how I purchased it, and selling / moving is the best idea of all of us, not to mention the fact he isn't on the deed because it's my place and it would never feel like our place because of this. I feel I might be the arse because I get why he might feel like it's just my place, and I feel I'm being too rigid in a time we need to work together. Plus I spoke to my sister and she sided with him, so 2 out of 3 people think I'm in the wrong here. I dumped him. There was a whole conversation, and during the conversation he said he didn't want to be a parent if I wasn't willing to do everything he wanted, including sharing a house / deed, plus staying together. Also, at the start of the conversation I said what a few people suggested, which was that I'd be willing to sell and split the house with him, provided he paid 50%, and he got very, very angry. Very, very quickly. He also said a few other things, how it's all going to pan out just yet, but it looks like I'm going to be a single mother.